Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with barges land at Rangoon, talking about barges, landing at Rangoon, and them trying to clear up the stuff. We're now on to Berlin falls to the Russians, May 2nd, 1945, in the center of the city. On May 2nd, Berlin, greatest city of the European continent, capitulated to the Russians after 12 days of deadly street fighting. Simultaneously, Marshal Stalin announced the destruction of the German Ninth Army southeast of Berlin, with the capture of 120,000 men and the slaughter of 60,000. The top picture shows the heart of Berlin in ruin. The lower picture shows the Friedrichstrasse, where the last furious battle took place before the Germans quit. Yeah, Berlin, very obviously important city to Germany, very famous city now. But yeah, you can just see the rubble. When the Soviets come in, obviously they're just trying to stop the Germans, and the Germans are trying to stop them at every inch of street. They are trying to stop them. And so the city just gets turned into absolute rubble in some places. And you can see, like, look at the buildings. It's just blown out and burned and scarred. Whole buildings just walls are collapsed, whole ceilings are collapsed, everything. It's just crazy, the amount of destruction. Berlin after the battle. May 2nd, 1945. Only a shell remains. Molenmarkt Square still burns above, and dazed civilians wander aimlessly through the wrecked streets of what was once the world's fourth largest city, with a population of 4,335,000. Below, some 70,000 German troops that surrendered marched through a devastated street. The futile defense, the futile, not futile, the futile defense of Berlin cost the city some 343,000 casualties in all, it was estimated. Yeah, Berlin, I mean, they like I said, they hold it really hard, and to some degree, they really should have surrendered by this point. It's just the higher ups throwing people at the Soviets, and it it's so many people die, and when Berlin goes up, a lot of things and people are lost. There are obviously, like they said, around 343,000 estimated. Who knows? Maybe more, maybe less. Um, but think about also all of the historical things that are in Berlin. There was museums, there was uh, houses of art, things like that, and all that stuff just gets turned into ash. Um, Actually, very famously, this war, and this is stuff that was we've gotten more since then, but in the field of paleontology, um, a Spinosaurus, there was a very well put together Spinosaurus um, fossil, very well held together, things like that. One of the best we've ever gotten, intact, and it went up in flames during during the Second World War. Um, it's just awful, all this stuff, and the people that are lost, especially over this, like I say, feudal defense. It just there's no point in holding when they can't really at this point. They've lost. They lost a long time ago. Russians pay a call at the Reichschancellery. May 1945. Not at home. When Soviet soldiers entered the Reichschancellery in Berlin, Hitler was not there to receive them. The building where the Fuhrer had hatched so many diabolical plots was wrecked and vacant, containing no trace of its former tenant. In these pictures, Russian soldiers wander at will in the shattered corridors from which the Nazis once controlled Europe. And you can see like they said, the Reichschancellery, big building, just absolutely devastated. And yeah, it's really, for these soldiers, it must have, think about this. You see all these things, hear all these things coming about Germany and the government and things like that. And then you walk into where a lot of it happened and it's just vacant, gone. Nothing but a shell of what it was. The feeling it must kind of feel eerie, to some degree. It must feel like a little bit of unease being there. Field Marshal von Rundstedt is caught. May the 2nd, 1945. Author of the Belgian Bulge. Field Marshal Karl von Rundstedt left, obviously, who schemed the abortive Battle of the Bulge in Belgium, was captured at his Bavarian retreat by soldiers of the American 7th Army. With him are his sons. Center, that guy obviously, is Lieutenant Hans von Rundstedt and a medical attendant. The Marshal was formerly Supreme German Commander of the Western Front. Yeah, and von Rundstedt, they say, oh, he was the architect of the bulge, but not really. He was in the sense that he planned a lot of the on the ground stuff. But the idea for the attack was Hitler's. It was fully Hitler's. He wanted this. He'd like, oh, let's try to throw all these, let's try to stop the enemies like we did in um, the early parts of the war. Let's see if we can do it again. It doesn't work, obviously, but and in some degree, you could say it actually hurts Germany more than anything because they throw all these troops at it, all this supplies, everything, and it's the last big buff, the last big puff of steam that Germany really has, and then once it's gone, the whole thing more or less collapses in on itself, and it's just yeah, and getting von Rundstedt must have been quite the prize. It's over in Italy, and troops pray. May the 3rd, 1945. The end of a dirty business. The 10th Mountain Division saw as tough as any in Italy, and when the shooting stopped, the battle-hardened troops gathered the following day at Torboli for prayer and thanksgiving. Here, the men bow their heads as their chaplain conducts in solemn service. Yeah, these guys, the 10th Mountain Division, if you don't know, they fought super hard in Italy because a lot of it's mountainous terrain, so you're going to have a lot of these mountainous troops. And they fight tooth and nail to get even an inch of ground in some cases. And you have to think they're just like, oh, I'm so glad to be done. So glad. Lightning Drive takes Rangoon. May the 3rd, 1945. Burma campaign virtually over. With the capture of the capital city of Rangoon by British 14th Army, the 3-year campaign to clear the Japs from Burma was virtually at an end. Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten declared that the Allies had inflicted 347,000 casualties on the Japanese in Burma, 97,000 of them counted dead. And there was left to accomplish mopping up operations only in Arakan and in a few sectors of the Irrawaddy Delta. Rangoon was seized after troops had traveled 1,000 miles of mountains and jungles from Laishao and Kohima, winning the key city only 10 days before the rains and the storms of the monsoon were due to strike. Rangoon, third largest port on the Indian Ocean, had a pre-war population of 400,000 and was the hub of the Burma transportation system. The capture of the city, climaxing the Burma campaign, was effected by Chinese American, British, Indian, and African troops. The picture shows an RAF regiment moving through a street in Rangoon. Yeah, Rangoon, very big city. Like they said, third largest port in the Indian Ocean. That's a big deal. A lot of supplies, a lot of troops, a lot of everything comes and goes from Rangoon. So to capture the city, that's a big deal. That's a very big deal. Burma's very important. And what's really interesting is the wealth of individuals that participated. Like they said, American, British, Indian, African. Um, so many, and Chinese. Can't forget the Chinese. You you really see just the amount of individuals coming to try to stop the Japanese and stop the Axis. It's everywhere. Um, you really understand this is a world war and everything is happening on that world scale. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways I can improve these videos, leave a comment below. Let me know. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.